It's 4:03 in the morning. The air is absolutely freezing,
Right.
and a park ranger's radio just crackles to life.
Right, and Jonas Mwenda, he's been a ranger there for 17 years. He knows exactly the rhythms of that radio.
Exactly. Usually it's this calm bureaucratic voice, or, if there's a tourist emergency, it's loud, it's frantic. But this time, the voice coming through the speaker is literally whispering.
Which, I mean, in this specific, highly monitored environment, a whisper at 4:30 a.m. is the absolute most terrifying sound you can hear.
Yeah.
It means the threat isn't just present, it's close enough to hear you breathe.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
So that whisper belongs to a field monitor named Amara. She's stationed at the South Observation Post, and her voice is just trembling. She tells Jonas that she is looking at a lion out there in the pitch black.
But not just any lion.
No, not from their records. It's an impossibly massive, totally unrecorded apex predator.
Which honestly should be a biological and geographical impossibility. This location is one of the most closed-off, intensely tracked ecosystems on the entire planet. I mean, nothing of that size just wanders in without setting off like a dozen alarms.
And that impossible scenario is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to our deep dive. We are exploring this absolute blockbuster of a story, decoded from a YouTube documentary transcript by the channel World Media.
It's an unbelievable case study. Our mission today is to analyze how an invincible empire that seems structurally impossible to defeat just fell in mere minutes.
We're looking at the terrifying consequences of complacency, really. And what happens when an exiled ghost, someone forged in the absolute margins of survival, comes back to claim a throne.
From a ruling class that basically forgot how to fight.
Exactly. So, to really make you feel why Amara whispering into that radio was so terrifying, we have to put you inside this location. We have to explain why it's supposedly impossible for anything to sneak in.
Yeah, you have to picture a natural coliseum. You are standing in a basin that spans roughly 300 square kilometers.
We are talking about the Ngorongoro crater in northern Tanzania. It was formed millions of years ago when this massive volcano just collapsed inward.
And when you look up from the floor of that basin, you aren't looking at rolling hills. You are looking at sheer rock faces rising over 600 meters straight into the sky.
600-meter vertical walls. I mean, it is basically a geological supermax prison. A concrete wall couldn't do a better job of trapping things inside.
And that isolation is the key to everything, right? Because it's a closed ecosystem, you get this unbelievably dense, almost claustrophobic concentration of life.
Something like 25,000 animals trapped in there.
Exactly. It's a closed loop of predator and prey.
And because that prey is trapped, the food is just unbelievably abundant.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the rulers of this Colosseum. The source material actually calls the lions in this crater super lions.
Which is an incredibly accurate term.
Yeah, for you listening, imagine an athlete who never has to do cardio, only eats a massive caloric surplus, and just lifts weights all day. Because these lions don't have to expend huge amounts of energy tracking prey across endless plains, they grow significantly larger and heavier than average lions.
But it's not just the food, it's the genetics. The ruling dynasty at the time of our story carried the bloodline of a legendary group called the Fluxo Coalition.
Right, an outsider group.
Yeah, they had managed to infiltrate the crater years prior. And when you blend those fresh, rugged outsider genetics with this concentrated, nutrient-rich local lineage, you get this phenomenon called hybrid vigor.
It creates literal biological anomalies.
It really does.
And those anomalies manifested as 5 gargantuan brothers, a coalition from the crater's Lake Pride. We even have their names: Hairy Mammal, Titan Jr., LK-116, LK-117, and LK-153.
Just massive animals. To give you a sense of scale, the smallest of these 5 brothers rivaled the size of the largest lions ever documented in all of Africa.
Wow.
They were an absolute machine of war. Early on, they violently wiped out all their competition, but the structure of their success created a fatal flaw.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. When you have 5 dominant, massive monarchs, the biological tension is immense. They require too many resources, too much breeding access to just share one centralized territory.
So ambition naturally forces a fracture. The 2 largest brothers, Hairy Mammal and Titan Jr., moved to the outer edges of the crater.
To establish their own peripheral empires.
Right, which left a trinity, LK-116, LK-117, and LK-123, to rule the absolute center. They had the absolute richest, most coveted real estate in the crater.
3 brothers, each weighing around 250 kilograms, acting as a single, unbeatable wall of muscle.
Crazy.
In the wild, a coalition of 3 prime males is considered a structural death sentence for any single invader. In Ngorongoro, they weren't just kings, they were untouchable gods. No nomad in their right mind would try to scale those 600-meter walls to fight them.
It defies baseline self-preservation. I want to translate this into human terms because the psychology here is just fascinating to me. Think of this trinity as a billionaire trust fund dynasty.
Oh, okay, I like that.
They are massive, they're incredibly wealthy in terms of resources, they own the absolute best penthouse in the city. But here is the critical vulnerability. They have eradicated their competition so thoroughly that they no longer struggle. They are fat on their own success.
And that comfort fundamentally alters their neurology. If you have never been truly challenged, your brain just stops scanning the horizon for existential threats.
Right, they develop this untouchable arrogance.
They simply stopped believing a threat could exist.
Which perfectly sets the stage for Jonas and Amara. Let's look at how that illusion of safety completely shatters. They drive out to the South Post to investigate Amara's whispered sighting.
And in the dense mud near a main watering hole, the entire convoy just stops dead.
Because they don't just find a footprint, they find a warning.
It's a single front paw print, but the dimensions are staggering. And the trajectory of the track is what truly chills the rangers. The prints didn't originate from the grassy plains.
They came plunging straight down from the steep, hostile forest zone of the crater walls.
Which is terrain that plains lions actively, intentionally avoid.
Right, they hate it there.
Precisely. The crater walls are freezing, they're vertical, and they lack the large, easy prey of the basin floor. Catching food on a 600-meter incline builds a completely different type of muscle fiber.
You'd have to be so lean and mean.
It requires immense stamina, extreme core strength, and a high tolerance for constant pain. A lion living up there isn't lounging around. He's surviving on the razor's edge.
So he didn't just wander in, he descended from a literal biological hell. The rangers track this animal for 3 exhausting days. And finally, they get their binoculars on him and the visual is shocking.
He's a giant male with a very dark mane. And we know biologically that a darker mane indicates incredibly high testosterone. This is a hyper-dominant male.
And his physical condition tells this story of relentless trauma. The source describes him as a specimen of inconsistent dimensions compared to the local population.
His body is just mapped in thick, brutal battle scars. And a scarred apex predator isn't just a fighter. He is a chronic survivor of a hyper-lethal landscape.
When he finally turns his face toward the Rangers' jeeps, Jonas actually loses his breath. He whispers to Amara, he has the face of the Fluxo Coalition.
And Amara doesn't even lower her binoculars. She just replies, I know.
This sparks a bombshell theory among the biologists. It wasn't officially published right away, but it completely dominated their private logs. They realized this wasn't just some lost nomad from the Serengeti.
No, the hypothesis was that this dark-maned titan was the discarded scum of the ruling bloodline itself.
Unpack that word for a second, scum. How does a royal bloodline produce an unrecognizable monster?
Well, massive coalitions produce kings, sure, but they also produce an immense amount of collateral damage. Cubs are violently swept out of the territory early by rival males or even aggressive uncles before they can be named, before they can be fitted with GPS collars.
So while the Trinity Brothers is lounging in their walled paradise, getting heavy and slow, this forgotten brother was forced up into the freezing, isolated rocks.
Exactly, and that environment wires him differently. The biologist noted he possessed the biological memory of the place.
What does that mean exactly? Like a sixth sense?
No, it means his neurological development occurred in this specific, harsh microclimate. He learned the terrain's cruelties during his most formative months. His instincts aren't tuned to leisure, they are tuned to hypervigilance and ruthless efficiency.
Man, it's hard not to look at this through a human lens. My mind immediately goes to, like, Shakespeare or a classic mafia revenge film.
Oh, totally.
It feels like the exiled brother looking down from the freezing rocks, watching the siblings who threw him out eat his food, just waiting for the perfect moment for payback.
That anthropomorphism is tempting, but the biological reality is actually much colder. He isn't operating on a human emotion like vendetta. He is operating on a ruthless calculus of survival.
Right.
Because when a standard nomad wants to test a new territory, they stand at the perimeter and they roar. They announce themselves to gauge the resident male's response time and numbers.
But this invader didn't make a sound. Ever.
Because he wasn't there to test the waters or negotiate boundaries. His silence indicates a singular, almost psychopathic focus to annihilate the current occupants. He treated the invasion as a tactical military strike, waiting for the cover of nightfall.
Okay, let's examine how that tactical strike totally dismantled an empire. It's the third night of monitoring, 11 p.m. The Rangers are positioned about 400 meters away, watching through night vision lenses.
And the ruling trinity is just relaxing in a dusty clearing.
Yeah, LK-116 and LK-117 are patrolling the edge very casually. LK-123 is laying down near the females. They're completely fundamentally unbothered.
Their situational awareness is practically zero because their environment has never required it.
Then, the attack happens, and the source describes it not as an ambush, but as a sudden explosion. The invader fires out of the dark brush like a flesh and hate missile.
Wow.
He crosses the distance in absolute silence and hits LK-116 with catastrophic force.
We have to analyze the physics and psychology of that initial strike. LK-116 is a 250-kilogram super lion. But the impact from the invader is so devastating and delivered with such speed that LK-116's physical stance is broken before his brain can even signal his claws to raise.
Going back to our trust fund analogy, right?
Yeah.
If you've never been punched in the face, your nervous system literally doesn't know how to process the shock.
Exactly. LK-116 suffers an immediate psychological collapse.
Through the night vision, the Rangers just see a hurricane of dust. Then LK-117, the second brother, jumps into the fray. So it's 2-on-1. By all laws of nature, the invaders should be torn apart.
The math says the brothers win, but the mentalities of the combatants are worlds apart. LK-117 is fighting to defend an asset. He wants to secure his territory. The invader is fighting with the sheer insanity of an organism that has lived a millimeter away from death his entire life.
He has nothing to lose.
Right. He anchors his weight, absorbs the blows, and just keeps grinding his teeth forward. He doesn't care about sustaining damage. He only cares about inflicting destruction.
And that sheer, unadulterated violence breaks them in a matter of minutes. LK-116 takes a deep, horrific wound to his right flank. He manages to tear himself free, but instead of regrouping, he abandons the fight entirely.
He just leaves.
He drags himself north into the dark, where he eventually dies alone from those injuries.
And that exit leaves LK-117 isolated. Think about the psychology of a pack hunter. LK-117 has never fought a true battle in his life without the overwhelming, crushing weight of his brothers beside him.
Right. His confidence isn't internal, it's a shared resource.
And when that shared resource vanishes, the panic sets in instantly. The courage just evaporates. This giant ruling god turns his back and runs for his life.
Which leaves us with the third brother, LK-123. Now, this might be the most intensely debated moment of the entire deep dive.
Oh, absolutely.
While this dust-filled massacre is unfolding, LK-123 is sitting at the back of the clearing. He hasn't taken a single scratch. He watches this unstoppable force systematically crush his massive brothers. And what does he do?
He calculates the odds, makes no sound, abandons the females, abandons the cubs, and completely ghosts his own empire. He just vanishes.
3 untouchable kings reduced to 3 fleeing cowards in minutes. The entire dynasty shattered without a single fatal blow actually being landed in the clearing itself.
Right.
Okay, but we need to pause here because I strongly push back on labeling LK-123 a coward. I think LK-123 is a genius.
A genius, really.
Look at it logically. He watched the data unfold in real time, ran the calculation, realized the probability of winning was 0, and chose to preserve his primary asset, his own life. He cut his losses. If survival is the ultimate goal in the wild, isn't escaping unharmed the smartest play?
I mean, it sounds pragmatic if you view the animal solely as an individual organism, but we have to look at the broader biological imperative here.
Okay.
In the animal kingdom, particularly for an apex predator, your biological imperative isn't just breathing, it's the propagation and protection of your genetic line.
But if he dies in that clearing, his chance of future reproduction drops to literally 0. By running, he lives to fight another day. You can go start a new pride.
Can he, though? Let's look at the map. He is trapped in a walled crater. The center is now held by a psychotic killer. The edges are held by his 2 estranged, highly territorial older brothers who likely won't welcome a massive competitor back into their limited space.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. By abandoning his females and allowing his existing cubs to be slaughtered without suffering a scratch himself, he surrendered his prime real estate and his genetic legacy. It is the definition of imperial ruin. He survived as a breathing entity, but he died as a king.
That is a phenomenal point. He handed over the keys to the kingdom while he was still holding a full deck of cards. His physical body survived, but his bloodline in the crater's prime territory was instantly erased.
And the aftermath in that clearing perfectly illustrates that erasure. When the dust finally settles, the three brothers are gone.
What fascinates me is the invader's reaction. He doesn't puff his chest out. He doesn't let out a triumphant roar to claim the space.
No, because he isn't performing for an audience. The Rangers watch him stand in the center of the arena, panting heavily in the freezing air, just scanning the darkness to ensure the threat is neutralized. Then, he calmly turns and walks slowly toward the unprotected pride.
The source material highlights Jonas Moenda's observations in the days that followed. The invader didn't just impulsively take over the females, he executed a chillingly systematic, methodical purge of the territory.
He demonstrated a military-level understanding of the pride's social structure. He systematically cleaned the layers of the society, starting with the most immediate threat to his genetic dominance.
Right. He subjugates the females through brute force, and then he kills the cubs. Which, as brutal as it sounds, we know is standard operating procedure for a new male, right?
Yes. Infanticide serves a very specific evolutionary function. By killing the cubs of the defeated males, the new king immediately brings the females back into estrus.
It stops the pride from wasting resources raising the genetics of his enemies.
Exactly. It accelerates the timeline for his own offspring.
It's pure biological math. But the most shocking tactic, the one that feels almost disturbingly cruel, is how he handles the adolescent males, the teenage princes of the pride. He doesn't kill them outright.
Because killing them quickly doesn't serve his long-term territorial goals as effectively as breaking them does. This is where we see true psychological warfare.
He hunts them for sport.
Yeah.
He terrorizes these young males, chasing them relentlessly night after night. He completely shatters them psychologically until they're driven out of the safe, resource-rich center of the crater.
He forces them into exile. Specifically, he drives them up into the exact same hostile, freezing, rocky edges of the crater walls that he himself was exiled to years ago.
Wow.
They are scattered, doomed to live as beggars in the shadows. They now know with absolute certainty that if they ever step foot back on the rich grass of the plain, this monster will tear them apart.
It neutralizes them as future threats, without him having to expend the energy of a fight to the death.
Precisely.
It completely rewrites the map of the Ngorongoro crater. Think about the new board state. The absolute center, the richest prize in Africa, now belongs to a single, solitary ghost.
And on the extreme, harsh edges of the crater, you have the two surviving original brothers from the outer territories, Hairy Mammal and Titan Jr.
Right, the older brothers.
Yeah, and they are now forced to harbor the broken, terrified remnants of their siblings' shattered empire. The core of their mighty quintet is simply gone.
Decapitated by one lion in a matter of minutes. So, how do we synthesize this? What does this mean for you, the listener? Let's bring the story out of the crater and into your reality.
If you look at the raw data, science and math will always tell you that numbers win. That three massive, well-fed giants will always defeat a single, isolated opponent. But this deep dive proves that structural advantage is an illusion if the internal drive is dead. An army that has grown fat on complacency, an empire that has forgotten the mechanics of struggle, is incredibly fragile.
It could easily be dismantled by a single soldier forged in the absolute absence of hope.
Exactly.
It is such a powerful, confronting metaphor. I want you to look at your own life. Think about your career, your business, your personal goals. Where are you relying strictly on your size or your past successes?
Where are you sitting comfortably in your own walled paradise?
Yeah. Assuming your position is safe, while someone hungrier, someone who has absolutely nothing to lose, is training in the dark. Are you operating like the Trinity, fat, happy, and slow to react? Or are you operating like the ghost in the mud?
Because the true fatal flaw of the kings wasn't physical weakness. It was the loss of their hypervigilance. The moment you believe you're untouchable is the exact moment you become prey.
Exactly. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought. Something to really chew on after this ends. Think back to the very end of the takeover. Okay. Think about what the new king, this invading ghost, did to those adolescent princes. He didn't execute them. He terrorized them and forced them up into the brutal, freezing rocks of the crater walls.
He forced them into the exact same crucible of isolation that created him.
Right. So by forcing those young lions into that brutal exile, hasn't this new king made a massive miscalculation? Hasn't he just guaranteed that in 3 or 4 years he is going to face a completely new generation of monsters?
Oh, wow.
Monsters whose muscles and minds were forged in the exact same furnace of hatred and survival that he was.
It speaks to the unavoidable cyclical nature of power. The cycle of exile and return is inevitable. The environment that creates the conqueror is eventually recreated by the conqueror himself.
It's only a matter of time. One day, a few years from now, a ranger's radio is going to crackle at 4:30 in the morning, and someone is going to be whispering again.